hello. We have 3 minutes past 2. And I think we should start because today we have a very tough, tight and full agenda. So let me introduce myself. I am Evelina. I come from Sunrise Tech Park in Vilnius. And we are hosting today this event on energy and climate for the project Seeds of Bravery. What I wanted to share, first of all, rules of the house, is that you can pose questions, raise your hand if you want to pose a question during this presentation, but you will also have a couple of minutes for questions after the end of the presentation, as well as Q&A session is open all the time, and we will review the questions after each presentation. I should also know that the session is recorded and will be available for you to review or in case you miss anything. And it's my pleasure to be the host today. So first of all, I would like to give a short overview by sharing my screen. Okay, here we go. As mentioned, we are here today on behalf of Seeds of Bravery project, and shortly about agenda. We will have 5 different sections of the agenda. I will do the welcome. Then we have our keynote speaker who will present key trends in energy and climate ecosystem. Then we will dip into the climate tech support initiatives, one from the Netherlands, which is like a regional initiative, and Climate-KIC representative talking what they can offer and what expects Ukraine in the future in the Climate-KIC, and some regional examples from Cleantech, an overview of the Baltic countries. So first of all, the introduction of the project. Seeds of Bravery is a 20 billion project funded by European Union, and it offers all kinds of support to Ukrainian startups. So partners are almost 20 organizations that joined forces to make this happen. And we offer financial support with some deadlines closing in November, December, and January. So those who are interested, please go to our website and check. And also this financial support is followed by non-financial services like knowledge sharing, matchmaking, participation in events, pitching opportunities, access to finance, and so on. And this event is one of them. So a few words about the host, about Sunrise Tech Park. We implement numerous initiatives annually and continuously. Here you see some of them. We focus on entrepreneurship, on clean tech and digitalization. And Futurepreneurs is one of the oldest programs that we run. It's a pre-accelerated program, and in 2022, we dedicated Futurepreneurs for startups proposing ideas how to help Ukraine specifically. And so without further ado, I would like to invite our keynote speaker, Louis, who will present the energy and climate ecosystem in Europe. And Louis has previous experience as a strategy consultant in Accenture before joining the Plug and Play team. Louis supports clients with understanding of market dynamics, technology trends, and how the open innovation working with startups towards creating tangible, valuable impact, with a key focus on energy and e-mobility sectors. So Louis, I stop sharing my screen and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Evelina. Share my screen now. Oops. Voila. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Evelina, for the intro. I will briefly introduce myself maybe one more time. I'm indeed Louis, part of the Plug and Play team. I am actually Belgian, but I work in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. Where we operate our Benelux office here. Plug and Play is actually a venture capital company from its origin, but we indeed offer also open innovation services to large corporates. Of these corporates can be energy retailers, but also other players within the energy industry, and I'm mainly working for them, together with the automotive partners that we have. So as Evelina said, energy and e-mobility are really my cup of tea here at Plug and Play, but also before at Accenture, which is a strategy consulting company. Maybe one more thing, Plug and Play is also part of the Seeds of Bravery consortium, let's say, the partner slide that Evelina showed, because we are also a startup accelerator. So we run accelerator programs, we manage them, and therefore we're part of the consortium here as well. So a VC startup accelerator, and also an open innovation services, you could call it innovation consulting services for large corporates. So enough about myself and the company that I work for. So happy to talk you guys through the energy tech and trends outlook today. So what are indeed the mega trends that we see in the market? I want to predominantly give you a bit of inspiration. I want to share, let's say, the basic knowledge about the market, some of the topics that you will have heard of before, that you see in the newspapers, etc. We want to demystify these topics, but I also want to inspire you with a lot of real use cases. So case studies that I worked on myself, or other case studies in the market that we see. So we're trying to make it as tangible and as practical as possible. The final note, maybe before we jump into the content, is really feel free to ask away. So happy to answer any questions in between the presentation. So raise your hand, it was mentioned in the chat, and ask away. Let's make it an interactive session. Okay. So I've defined, or we have defined 6 mega trends actually. So there are 6 that I will guide you through in the upcoming hour. Again, I think there are some concepts or words that you have definitely heard about, but if we talk about the energy industry today, and especially in the future, these are the 6 megatrends, or sort of categorization that you can make. So one is, of course, the renewable energy production. Now, if we talk about energy today, it's dominantly about renewable energy, right? Underneath renewable energy production, we also have the categorizations in more detail, which are solar, wind, nuclear, geothermal, and hydropower. And then even underneath these categories, let's say, there are even more subcategories that you could define and structurize renewable energy production in, right? Then there is the electrification. I see something small went wrong with the slides. There is nothing in the buckets there, but you see the main topics. So if we talk about electrification, it's electrifying, for example, the automotive industry. So that's then what we call the e-mobility. We can also think about heavy industries these days. So oil and gas, chemical industries, and everything that they use today in thermal energy will also be electrified. And then there is the topic of energy flexibility. And that's a very big topic that I would like to address with you today as well. The third megatrend, or the third focus area within the energy industry, is what we call the climate-friendly molecules, or you've heard about it probably more as hydrogen. Let's say theoretically, there is also ammonia and other climate-friendly molecules, but the main one that we all know is hydrogen. And there you see the deviation in terms of the supply chain. So there is hydrogen production, consumption. So in which applications is it being used? Is it being used in vehicles or in heavy industry processes? How is it stored? It's also particular storage in terms of if you want to store it in liquid, for example, or in gas. How is it carried? Or what are the other carriers like ammonia? And what are alternative fuels? Also a topic that comes up quite a lot if we talk about climate-friendly molecules. So I hope these concepts already sort of ring a bell, or that you've have heard about them before. These are 3, and we have 3 more that again define the energy industry today, which is energy storage, very important one as well, energy management, and decarbonization. So decarbonization, for example, is the carbon capture, the utilization, and the storage for the better climate purposes. The energy management goes towards creating more energy efficiency, making sure supply and demand are really aligned with one another. And the storage one is a very important one. If we talk about more and more renewable energy, energy storage will be a key accelerator in that story, right? We need to be able to store energy for short term, but preferably for a long duration, in order to really make our energy system of today more renewable. Okay. So these 6 key trends are the topics that I want to discuss with you today. Like I said, I hope these topics already ring a bell. I think they come across very much, again, in newspapers today, or if you talk about energy, you have seen these concepts and wordings. The following 6 points are my key takeaways on the energy industry today. And I will go over them. Don't be scared if some things don't ring a bell yet, because I will still explain them later on in the keynote today. But in my opinion, and that's maybe a very important one, a nice one to start with, as it stresses the importance also of today's webinar, right? Energy is the new currency. It is such a critical asset these days for a country and in the entire world. Energy is literally, like many other things, but energy is one of the elements that keeps us going every day, right? If there is no energy, we couldn't charge our laptop, we couldn't have this session, there is no light in this room, there is no electric heating, there are no production plants that are producing food or cars, anything that you can imagine, right? So energy really is at the heart of an economy and also of a country as a whole. Therefore, it becomes such a real trading value and a real currency, especially due to the recent geopolitical climate and also, climate crisis, or the climate goals that we have as Europe and as a globe. Then the second point is what you see more and more within the energy industry is that consumers like yourself and myself become more and more prosumers. So they take up a more active role within the industry. They're not just buying energy anymore, paying it every month, and that's all about it, right? They are installing solar panels, they are installing home batteries, they are driving electric vehicles, they want to have more insights into their energy usage, and so on and so on. So a consumer plays a much bigger part today and will be in the future than it did a couple of years ago. So remember that one as well. Energy efficiency first. I think energy efficiency is one of the most, let's say, low-hanging fruit out there in order to make our energy industry more green, in order to reach climate goals. Becoming more efficient with the amount of energy that you have is the number one, right? Number two is probably energy flexibility. That's why we say here, no energy flexibility, no party. There is no future in the energy industry without talking about flexibility. So I will discuss it later on as well, but due to the fact that you have more and more renewable energy production, there is also a supply that is less known, that is less sure, right? Back in the days, you had like 1 or 2 large production plants, and they gave you the same amount of energy for a period of time, and there was really no uncertainty. Also, in terms of the demand, so as a consumer, but also as an economy, it stayed pretty stable. But today, that's really not the case anymore, right? There are more and more devices or industries that ask for energy, and also they ask for it predominantly at the same time. So they create peaks within the system. On the supply side, like I said, it's not just one energy plant anymore. You have a windmill park, you have solar panels or big solar parks, and so on and so on. But they rely, of course, on sun or on wind. Same with hydropower or whatever. They rely on certain elements of nature, let's say, right? So also the supply of energy is a lot more uncertain, has a lot more variability, basically. And flexibility is the concept of matching the energy demand and the energy supply and playing with that. So we'll go into detail later on. But again, energy storage is also a large element for that one. And the last two, I think they also go outside of the energy for sure, energy industry, sorry, for sure, but they are also super important here, right? So the power of collaboration is real needed, it says, meaning that you see that a lot more players come into the energy industry besides the original energy retailers, for example, or the owners of certain production plants. You see automotive coming in. You see certain players taking up different roles within the market. And you also have the owners of the electricity grid, etc., that take up different roles. So you see a convergence. I think also a good example with oil and gas companies. Total is not called Total anymore. It's called Total Energies. So they really go away from pure oil and gas towards the energy industry as well. So you see a convergence of different kind of players' roles within the market, and it's important that they work together. And they all have their specific competences. It's important that they work together. And then maybe the last one is an important one as well, right? So there is no business on a dead planet. Everything, if we talk about the energy industry, everything is done with the aim of reaching climate goals, to be honest, right? Or it should be, at least, in my opinion. Okay. So the 6 megatrends that I talked about before, and then a bit my already preliminary takeaways on the market. I will give you a bit more, let's say, knowledge or insights right now about the topics that I discussed. So if we look at the renewable energy production, what is very important to note here is that the two biggest ones for the future, let's say, will be solar and wind, with solar being the dominant energy producer. I think I'm not sure about the numbers, but the numbers are crazy. I think in Belgium, for example, there is still 90% of the rooftops that you could fill potentially with solar panels, right? So the potential for solar is still enormously, while for wind energy, for example, we are already putting a lot of wind parks in the North Sea or other seas at the moment, and also on land. So onshore wind farms are not that likely to get permits. It's not that nice for us as habitants to live with a windmill next to my house. Rather, solar is a more adaptable solution, right? So know that solar and wind will be the biggest two producers, but that solar will really be the dominant one, right? What is maybe one other thing that I want to point out here? There is a lot of information on the slide, but I want to point out that China, if we talk about geographical leadership, let's say, within this market, China is really the player that dominates the solar market in terms of companies that produce solar panels. And they also have, as a country, a lot of capacity potential, of course. Makes a lot of sense. The final thing that I want to note here is that if we talk about renewable energy, you see that there is, of course, also a lot of push from European Union or governments, maybe in general, with incentives. And so I think European Union is one of the front runners with that, but really with their climate plans and the funds that they have, they are pushing for locally produced energy production, solar, wind. And I think in countries in especially Central Europe, there has been a lot of focus also on those offshore wind parks, for example. There is a third one. That's the final note of this slide. There is a third one. If we talk about solar and wind, there's also geothermal energy. Geothermal energy is literally taking energy out of the core of the earth, right? So there is also a heat that is, let's say, underneath us within the ground, and you can extract that and take that heat as an energy producer. That is the geothermal energy. Probably a bit more interesting for industrial purposes. Again, we're not putting a geothermal, sorry, we're not putting a geothermal factory next to a building of apartments. I will skip this slide. These are mainly like trends. If we talk about the investments, like I said, a lot of the investments are backed these days by subsidies and a push from governments like the EU. Same for wind. So renewable, solar, and wind. Electrification, I want to point out the energy flexibility topic, really. What is electrification? Maybe first, before diving into the flexibility one. If we talk about electrification, it's very important to know that we can electrify a lot of processes and applications, such as, like I said, with cars is one of the most tangible and easy examples that I can give. But know that many of the heavy industries and the heavy industry processes, if we talk about a chemical plant, if we talk about cement, these heavy industry plants, they cannot just be electrified. We can electrify heating and cars again, but these processes are not that easy to electrify. And therefore, the climate-friendly molecules or hydrogen is really a good alternative. So if we talk about hydrogen these days, it will mainly be within this in heavy industry context, rather than, for example, again, a hydrogen car. It's not that suitable for that application. So electrification, like the word is saying, electrifying whatever process or asset that we can. And I want to touch upon the energy flexibility topic here. Again, maybe a lot of info on the slide that you don't per se need to look at, but I want you to look at the innovation areas. So if we talk about energy flexibility, like I said, it's a tool to match energy demand and energy supply, which becomes more and more relevant in the energy industry of today and the future. These are a couple of the innovation areas if we talk about energy flexibility. So first is, for example, the integrated energy management solution. So in order to match supply and demand, what you try to do is you try to manage your energy better. You try to have a view on what is my supply, what is my demand, where is it coming from, when is it high, when is it low. So the first thing is trying to, let's say, get an overview or get insights into the energy that you supply, the energy that there is demanded, the usage throughout the day, for example. So to really get those insights, then the second point you could say is once you have the insights, you're trying to optimize it. So again, you're trying to match energy supply and energy demand in order for there to be no supply deficits, for example. And so It can be that when I'm not matching it, that there is no supply for a certain demand. And again, this will happen dominantly on peaks. So the peaks are often in like a normal, let's say, economy or household. The peaks often happen within the mornings and in the evenings. In a household when everybody's waking up, or the household when everybody's coming home. And so using a dishwasher, turning on the lights, etc., etc. And so to make sure that there is enough energy supply, I need to have the data insights, the energy management, and then to manage it, right? I want to optimize it. And that's the second bullet, basically. Here it says battery optimization. So why did I say that energy storage and batteries was such a crucial element? Well, a battery can store energy for a certain period of time and give it back whenever you need it. So again, let's take a household and a peak demand in the morning. If the night before I have had a lot of wind, let's say there is a lot of wind in the night, I can store that renewable energy, the green energy, the wind energy within my battery. I can store it, use it whenever I want, and I want to use it in the morning when there is a peak in demand, right? So that's a way to use storage to balance my demand and supply. You see two other points there, which is a bit more towards the transmission system operators, so the companies that really operate the electricity grid. But the example that I gave for you and me, for a house, for a household, also accounts, of course, on, let's say, a higher level. It accounts for production plants, but also on a grid level. So the electricity grids and the electricity that we use every day also needs to be managed by a company, and they use the same principles, right? They also talk about flexibility, managing my grid, having insights into the grids, etc. So that's a really important one for them as well. I can't see if there are questions actually, by the way, but if there are.
Louis, we have several questions, but I assume we can wait for the end of your presentation because the topic has passed already. So.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I propose you just finish and then we
Sure.
go back.
Sure. Okay. Electrification, we also talk about e-mobility. So here again, four interesting topics that you see in blue in the innovation area. I think smart charging and vehicle to grid are some things that you might have heard about. So in order to charge our cars more efficiently, and again, to manage how much we are asking from the grid, so what is the demand, we're not going to plug in an electric vehicle all at the same time. So let's say the entire Netherlands, which is I think about 24 million people or something like that. Let's say we have 5 million electric vehicles in the future. That means if they all plug in at 6 o'clock in the evening when they come home from work, that there will be a huge problem. They probably don't have the energy supply at that moment to provide that. So what we do is, again, it's a software system that you need to think of, is a system that manages the flow of the energy in the car in a better way, in a smarter way. So that's why it's called smart charging, meaning that if you plug in the vehicle at 6 when I come home, together with those 5 other million people here in the Netherlands, then the system will say like, hey, when do you need your car again? How much does it need to be charged? And I will make sure that by that time it is charged 100% or 80%, whatever you need by the time you need it. I will make sure it happens, but I'm not providing you the full energy at 6 o'clock, because then, like I said, then we would have a problem. So it really is sort of managing it and the load of avoiding those peaks, basically. And so it's avoiding the peak and saying like, let's charge overnight very slowly at the same pace, and in the morning you have a full car again. but we don't need to fill it up with electricity in the first hour between 6 and 7. We can also do it after 12 in the night, for example. So that is smart charging. Vehicle to grid is like the word saying. You have a couple of cars today. It's not that many. For example, the Nissan Leaf is one of the car models that can do it. But you have cars that can also give energy back to the grid. So when you plug in your vehicle, you receive energy and you can manage it. That's smart charging. But when the car can not only be managed, but also say like, hey, I will give you some energy back when the grid needs it, then it's called vehicle to grid. So the 6 o'clock example again, we are already maybe smart charging a lot of the electric vehicles that are plugged in when everybody comes home at 6 o'clock. But then there are also vehicles that say like, hey, I know 6 o'clock for the electricity grid, for the supply is a tough time. I will give you the energy back that I have at the moment because I don't need it. I need my car to be charged in the morning. I don't need it now. So I'll give it back to you in this peak period at 6 o'clock because otherwise the supply wouldn't meet the demand. So that's, again, it's flexibility, right? You play basically with the energy that is in the car. And you can see a vehicle or an electric vehicle more and more as like a huge battery on wheels. It's basically nothing more than that, or at least for energy geeks like myself, maybe. The other two topics you can skip. But so if we talk about electrification, the flexibility and e-mobility are two main topics, and the e-mobility, the battery on wheels, is also again another asset that you can play with and that can provide energy flexibility. If I am doing smart charging or if I'm doing vehicle to grid, I'm basically doing the service of energy flexibility. I'm flexible with the demand and the supply. Okay. Also minding the time. I want you to look in this slide only at the graph. I know it's pretty small, but so when I talked about climate-friendly molecules before, I said we cannot electrify everything, especially in the heavy industries. And that's where the climate-friendly molecules are interesting to still make sure we have a more sustainable or a more renewable energy supply for these kind of plants and processes. So what you see on the graphs, and why I wanted you to look at the graphs, is that hydrogen before seemed like the holy grail. It was the one thing that would help us greenify the entire energy system and reach our climate goals. But you see in the graphs that the investments, they took up pretty steeply, but they also went down since this year. And it has several reasons, of course, but one of the reasons is that there is a bit of people come a little bit back from the concept that hydrogen would be the holy grail, right? So it has its applications again in heavy industry, but before hydrogen was like, oh, let's try to make cars on hydrogen. Let's try to hydrogenize basically everything, right? And that's something that in 2024, I have the feeling, and maybe already 2023, the industry itself has come back a little bit from that standpoint. So we see that the investments, they decrease, and just there is more of a focus now on hydrogen for the heavy industry, but for all the rest, we will go to electrification, right? And the final point here is it's important to know that when we talk about hydrogen, in order to use an electrolyzer, in order to make hydrogen, let's say, you need energy, right? So, and if we want to make green hydrogen, which is the end goal, we don't want to make what we call gray hydrogen. Gray hydrogen is made with fossil fuels or even with coal, for example. That's not the future. That's something we don't want. In order to make green hydrogen using renewable energy, we need renewable energy. And basically, it means that everybody came to the realization that first, let's electrify what we can. First, let's use the renewable energy for the processes directly that we need it for. And if there is extra, we can also put it into the process of hydrogen, basically. And because we all know that while we're in this transition, there is not a lot of extra. It's difficult to really see hydrogen as a big energy production or energy producer at other applications than the heavy industry. Okay, storage. I think what is important to mention about the energy storage is that you have the small storage, the small batteries that you have at home, for example. You have electric vehicles. You can see that again as a battery on wheels. It's a storage mechanism as well. You have more and more of those large storage facilities, those battery parks, super packs they call it even, and like those large batteries. But they all share the same purpose, which is storing renewable energy at the moment that it is not really needed. Keep it, store it for the moment that it is needed, for peak periods or for whenever we want to use it. They all share that same purpose, right? And again, in terms of flexibility, a battery is the one asset, let's say, that you can play around with, and you can put something in and take something out whenever you need it. So this slide mainly says that there is a huge uptake. There is a huge uptake in energy storage, and this slide mentions that there are different types of battery technology. There is lithium ion, metal air batteries, the flow batteries, like I mentioned. So different types. And then maybe one point here to stress is that you see a huge uptake of battery recycling as well. So especially for EVs, the EV battery criteria are super strict. So when an old EV battery is, let's say, not allowed anymore, or an EV battery is not allowed anymore to be used in EVs, electric vehicles, it still has a lot of potential in just like as a storage mechanism. Just like I said, because the EVs, the battery prescriptions, let's say, are pretty strict here. But for storage, you can still use it. So we see a lot of uptake in battery recycling as well. Energy management is a bit what I explained before. It's getting insights and managing your energy flow. Energy management and flexibility are concepts that are used very much for the same purpose, while energy management is a tool. Energy management systems are software systems to perform energy flexibility or energy flexibility services. So you can see maybe energy management and again the tools and the software for the purpose of providing energy flexibility. That's a bit how you can see the two topics. So here I don't want to go too much into detail. It's more tech related, right? And then the decarbonization, we've discussed it. It's the carbon capture, the storage that you see also in the heavy industry, and a lot of the projects that happen in the heavy industry are also backed by the European Union. Again, it's a topic that is also highly subsidized by governments and the heavy industry. Okay. The questions will come at the end then, apparently. So I'll give you a couple of use cases, real life use cases. Now that we have done a bit more, let's say, the knowledge part, the use cases are really there to, one, showcase what we just have seen as in terms of topics and concepts. How does it translate into a real life use case? How does it translate into reality? And two, to inspire you a little bit, like to inspire with the most innovative use cases that we see today, so that you know, let's say, what is the innovation that is happening within the industry. Before I go into the use cases, there is one slide in between that I quickly want to go over, which is the changing industry dynamics. So as I said, there is this general concept of the energy transition, and the energy industry is going through a lot of innovation and change at the moment towards more sustainable energy system in the end, right? You see that there is a certain relationship to that when we talk about the large energy players, and that there is always some sort of a same phenomenon that is happening within the industry. Yeah? So you have the entire energy industry, and like I said, you have the 6 megatrends. In each of the megatrends, you have different subtopics, and in these subtopics, there has, in each of these subtopics, there has happened a changing industry dynamic. So if I talk about solar, wind, or e-mobility, for example, each of those markets are part of the energy industry, but are a market on their own, right? And so for that market to change, to become more sustainable, there is a phenomenon that happens. And the phenomenon always happens in 6 steps. So I just wanted to point them out to you, which is also, I think, super relevant for you if you are having a startup in the industry, or thinking about an idea to start within the energy industry. Try to sort of identify the niche market that you're targeting, where in the phenomenon or where in the 6 steps it currently is, right? Because it will tell you how big the opportunity for you is as a new entrant into the market. So let's take, for example, EV charging. But again, you can take the 6 steps also for solar, for wind, for geothermal, for any subcategory within the entire energy industry. You cannot measure the energy industry as a whole, right? So let's take EV charging. There were a couple of players, so there are a couple of big players that are dominating the market, and the market itself is relatively boring. There's not a lot of things happening back in the days or in the very, very early stage. Yeah, just not a lot going on. A couple of the big energy retailers that were owning the market because it was close to their core business. Same for automotive. Automotive was also pretty early into EV charging. So a handful of large corporates dominated traditional markets. Or we can even say, with that picture, it's not even EV yet, but it is oil. So we were just filling up our cars at the normal gas station. Okay, so that's number one. Then this huge comet is coming, which means like there's a new tech regulation or certain customer demands heading towards the industry. So that is where the EV comes into play, right? So instead of traditional cars, traditionally filling up your car at the gas station, there was this idea of electric vehicles and charging cars instead of filling them up with gas. So the dominant players are sort of shocked by this comet and the new technology that is heading towards them. Then within that already slightly starting to change industry, there are some niche startups that will tap into this new technology, that will tap into this new customer demand, and they start to grow and they start to gain traction, right? Because there is some sort of a new wave coming within that traditional industry, and on the new wave, those niche startups are basically surfing on that one. Okay. The market then matures into what we would so call a bit like a Wild West market. So you have the big players that are looking around like, okay, should I move from my traditional business to this new tech, to this new business? Some are doing it, some are not. You have some very small niche startups, but some of the niche startups are also, like it said, really growing and really gaining traction, that they become almost as big as the traditional players, and you just have so many new players at that time. There are so many different type of companies within the industry because they all see a certain value that is going to come up, and it just becomes, like it said, a wild west with a lot of different roles, companies, industries coming together. And then the large corporates, they really start to feel that the startups that are growing and that are gaining traction, they really start to feel it. So they are not that dominant anymore within their slightly traditional, boring industry. Everything was set. You had a couple of players, but they start to feel that their business is really slowing down, or customers don't perceive them anymore as the number one company in the industry, etc., etc. So what then happens is those large corporates, they have a sense of the fear of missing out, right? And there's some sort of merger and acquisition mania that comes up. They think like, oh shit, I need to start tapping into this trend as well. I need to start surfing the wave. So what they often do is, okay, either they develop something themselves, but what they more often do is they start buying the smaller companies, right? So they see like, okay, we need to go into that direction. Who can I buy? Who can I set maybe a joint venture with, partner with? But they often just buy the smaller companies. And then the last phase of a market, I think the EV market or the EV charging is between phase 5 and 6 at the moment, where there is in the last phase there is an industry convergence taking place. So the amount of players is again a bit smaller than in the Wild West era, because the big corporates has bought some players. Also, the really small startups, they don't all succeed, right? So there are a couple of startups that succeeded. There are a couple of traditional players that bought some of the startups and that are still relevant in the game. And maybe there are also some traditional players that just went out of the market. So the amount of players becomes again a bit smaller, but it's still more than in the first picture, right? And then you see that there is even an industry convergence. So there are different kind of industries tapping for the same value pool. So if we talk about EV charging, it might have started only with energy companies and energy retailers, but it's also oil and gas these days. It's also automotive these days. I think even at a certain point in Belgium, you had telecom players that were setting up charging stations. You had the banks that thought it was an interesting market because they all see the potential. You see different kind of industries tapping within that same value pool. And that sort of, again, needs to mature a little bit. But that is, I think, where the EV charging market is at the moment, and the 6 phases just highlight how an industry changes in dynamics, from a couple of large corporates to really startups gaining traction, corporates that go out, and an industry convergence that is taking place. So that's what you see heavily within the energy industry, within EV charging, within the energy flexibility, yeah? So the energy management systems, and so on and so on. So you see it in a lot of subcategories. Yes, Evelina.
It's a very interesting diagram and dynamics. Which phase would you say is the best to launch a startup?
That's a very, very good question. I would say personally, 2 or 3, to be honest, to launch, right? If you are launching in 2, when the comet arrives, you have a sort of a first mover advantage, maybe. And you are a startup, but you were the pioneer. You were one of the first ones to get into it. That will give you a lot of advantages. But if you come into a little bit later phase, in 3 and 3.5 maybe, you can piggyback on the first movers. You are maybe the 5th player that is in that particular niche. You can sort of already learn from what the first mover has done. But if you are only launching, for example, in number 5, when the corporates are starting to get FOMO, you're probably not that attractive to get bought. You're probably too late already in the game. It's still possible, but I would say 2 or 3, and maybe 3.5 max.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, a couple of use cases or case studies that I want to show to you guys today. That's the final part of the presentation, and then we can take some questions. But I really love these ones, and if you want to go into the energy industry, definitely have a look at Octopus Energy, which is, I think, one of the most innovative, if not the most innovative company if we talk about the energy industry. And what I want to highlight here is that these companies, they started from like in the previous slide, they started basically from making use of number 2, right? From the new tech and regulations within the industry. They were a small player. They were not a traditional player in the market, and they became basically Octopus, definitely in UK, became number 1, and they became to be seen as one of the most innovative and the number 1 player in the energy industry. So it's a really nice story that they went through the phases, let's say. What I want to highlight here is that, one, they're very playful. You look at the logo already. It's very different than a traditional energy company that was just selling you energy as a commodity, and that was just having a billing system. So they gave you energy and they wanted to collect your money, and the core of the company was regarding billing, invoices, and basically getting the money at the customers, and rightfully so back in the days, right? But the industry changed a lot, and Octopus was the one that was a lot more playful and customer centric and digital. So they really started, it's what you hear quite a lot in automotive as well. We are a tech company. They are at the heart, they are a tech company and not an energy company. And they use these new capabilities that are needed in the industry today. They use these new digital capabilities to really become a front runner. And what I want to highlight here is a nice example of the customer centricity. So you can look this example up as well. But so Octopus Energy, for example, puts really the customer at the core of their company. They say that, and you think like, how much do they really do it, right? But so, for example, when you are calling with support service, they don't play like a generic. they don't play a generic tune when you're in the waiting line. So you're waiting for minutes to get a hold on them. But instead, they know if you are a known customer to them. They know your birth year, the day you were born, and they will play the number 1 song from the moment you were 16. So the moment you were 16, this song was in the number 1 in your country, and they'll play that song instead of like a generic song when you're waiting in line, just because, again, it's a bit playful, it's different, but it also shows that they put the customer at the heart, and it makes the waiting for support a lot more fun and easy. So that's like it's a small and fun example, but they are really a great company throughout their entire product offering, service offering, etc. And then Kraken is their platform. So what is the crazy story here is, like I said, they started more from a tech background, and they started as a small company, not a traditional player in the energy industry. But today, the Kraken platform, so it's really the platform that they as a company use to sell energy, to buy energy, to manage their energy as a company, is such a good platform with the tech capabilities that they had in-house. They developed it completely themselves, so they're not reliant on any other. It's so good that even the traditional energy players today are buying their platform. So they made it for themselves, but now they can basically sell it as a B2B solution to other players as well. So that's how crazy good these guys are in that regard. And then maybe the last one is an interesting example to show to you guys that innovation in the industry doesn't only need to happen if we talk about a product or a service, but it can only also be rethinking the business model that exists within the industry, right? So Sonnen is a German scale up, I have to say, not startup anymore, probably scale up. That was actually bought by Shell a couple of years ago. And Sonnen is a German startup or scale up, sorry, that started as a home battery supplier. So they made these nice batteries at home, nice design, a good product. But again, they thought of, okay, that's pretty innovative, but they thought also of how can we really become different in terms of the business model that we use. So instead of just selling the home battery, they sell it in a membership fee together with solar panels on your roof. And they also do leasing of electric vehicles. So they say like, okay, we start with the battery, but then we add the solar panels, and then you can even lease an EV, electric vehicle, via us. So they create an entire integrated offering for you to make your home more green or to have a more renewable home. So they offer that in a package, in an integrated offering, and as a subscription model. So this was something that was not done before as well. Like a battery company that is leasing EVs as well was completely crazy. But it makes sense now. So different kind of business model. And then maybe another one that I want to highlight here is just to highlight the power of a startup or a scale up for those big corporates and for the industry in general. So a super nice example, which we facilitated with Plug and Play, by the way, is the example of Energisa and Enline. I cannot press the video right now, or I can, but I will not. If you type in Energisa, Plug and Play, or Energisa and Enline, you will get the video. You can check it out. It's on YouTube. And again, just to showcase the impact that you can have as a startup or scale up, is the company Enline is so good in a particular niche. I will not go into like the technical details, that they are working for almost every big transmission system operator, so the owner of the electricity grid, with their software solution to make sure that these large companies reduce their OPEX with more than 20%, which is massive. Huh? They have a software solution for the grid, making sure that it is used better. So there is less maintenance. There are less people really that from those companies need to go and check out the electricity grid, the large electricity poles that you see, the plants that they have. So they automate it more, they digitalize the process a lot more. They can do everything more from the Enline platform rather than they need to send people, basically. So reducing OPEX with more than 20% and reducing the energy losses with more than 30%. So massive gains with a digital solution, a startup or a scale up that helps then the corporates and the energy grid and the entire energy system in the end. That started super small, right? So if it can be an inspiration for you guys, definitely check this one out. The e-mobility ones I will probably skip. I will just give these points as the last pointers, and then maybe a couple of questions because I see we're running out of time. But coming from the industry dynamics, the 6 steps that you can identify within an industry, going through those innovative case studies, those real pioneers, Octopus, Sonnen, but also the Enline company. You see a couple of success factors that always come back. So try to embed them into your organization as well would be my advice. These are a couple of the success factors that you can see within the previous cases. What do those pioneers do? in the beginning of such a changing market, they take a niche position. They focus on one thing. Sonnen focused on batteries first, becoming the best in the home batteries, and then looking at something else, right? But you focus on a niche first into this changing and growing markets. So stepping in at the right steps, 2 to 3.5, we set into in the changing industry dynamics, right? What you then need to do, and that's something that Octopus does very well, right? So they say customer centricity is at our heart. Well, they even go as far as making sure that the music that you're listening to when you're waiting in line for their customer support, even that is customized to you. Even that has a playful touch, showcasing that they put the customer at the heart, right? So if that is your strategic position, you need to embed it in every decision of your company. If you want to be the Ryanair of the energy industry or the Rolls-Royce of the energy industry, you need to embed it into marketing, customer service, supply chain in every part of your company, right? The third one is what I said as well. Don't only look at innovation within the energy industry if we talk about a new solar or new wind technology, but also look at the business models. Definitely when we talk about energy flexibility, right, and how to play with that, there is still a lot of opportunity in terms of the business models. The fourth one, having the new and necessary capabilities in-house, the Kraken platform that I discussed, it started from having the digital knowledge, expertise, creating a premium software solution, creating the best platform that there is, and having the capabilities to do that in-house is what really made them a pioneer in the end, right? So it's maybe a bit outside of the mega trends of the energy industry, but in my personal advice, have capabilities enough, let's say, in-house, the ones that are core, that are crucial, do not outsource them too easily. And then maybe the last one is, if you're starting a company within the energy industry and you're not per se looking at the energy, the business models, but more into products and services, really look at Horizon 2 and Horizon 3, right? So the innovations in Horizon 1 are incremental innovations, but these are innovations that the large companies are also pretty good at, or probably better at. They continuously improve their own products, but on a Horizon 1 level, so incremental, like small changes. While if you go to a really transformative or a disruptive product or service that can really disrupt the industry, it's where they look for startups and scale-ups, right? So you should look into that direction and leave the Horizon 1, I would say, to the larger corporates. So that were my final sort of common success factors that I noticed within those companies. I hope you remember the 6 trends, a couple of the nice case study examples, and a lot of things maybe for you to still Google, look up, or that you got a bit of energy and inspiration out of this, to either continue to build your company in the energy industry or to start something in the energy. Because I want to close with the first remark that I said, it really is the new currency. It's super important today, and we need a lot more bright minds like you to work in that industry.
Okay, thank you, Louis. It was very interesting, at least for me. I have some takeaways too. We have 3 questions, and in your slides, one of the front, one of the beginning ones, where your takeaways on the energy industry, where you mentioned energy is the new currency and from consumers to prosumers. So participant is asking, what are some practical ways to encourage consumers to become prosumers in the energy system?
Yeah, very straightforward one is money. You can provide them like a good price when they imagine I put solar panels on my roof. You can provide them a good price for giving excessive solar energy to the grid or to you as a company. But there are different ways as well. So what you can work with is like a nice point system, or I've seen companies that if you give solar energy back, you are incentivized with free charging hours. So I give solar energy back to the grid. They say like there is no direct money to it that you get, but you can charge your car for, I don't know, 6 hours for free, for example. There are also like point systems, deductions on your energy bill. Yeah, it's mostly monetary, to be honest, or at least some sort of exchange with solar and EVs that I've seen before.
Okay. Do you use one in your home?
No. I live in Amsterdam. That's
That's working.
small apartments. No house with the EV and etc. for me. No.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, what role do you think emerging regions like Asia, Africa, and Latin America play in the future of solar energy, solar in particular?
That's a very nice question. I did not mention that, so thank you for asking that question. But I think, as you saw, China already a major player in terms of producing these technologies. Probably they have the capacity as a country to also play a major player in generating it, so deploying solar, for example. But Africa, and especially in Morocco, they are really already, let's say, far ahead into using the potential of solar energy. So in Africa, for example, there is one of the largest facilities in the entire world. It's not purely solar energy, but it's a subcategory. But they have a lot of natural advantages compared to Europe. Indeed, to deploy solar, they also often have still a lot of space. You need a lot of space. It's why I talked about 90% of the rooftops in Belgium have still the potential for solar to deploy solar energy. We need to do it on rooftops in urbanized areas, while countries, Africa, Asia, maybe Asia less, but so Africa for sure, they have the space and they have the weather conditions, the natural advantages. So I definitely have a look at Morocco and more than the northern countries, because they are and will be main suppliers of Europe, and I think even of the world for certain parts.
Okay, thank you. And the last question, how can businesses improve consumer participation in demand-side management programs?
I've seen a very nice marketing campaign in the UK. I think it was last year or the year before, to first sort of educate consumers. And I think it's super important to educate consumers in saying like, hey, if you don't plug in your car all at 6, if we don't use our dishwasher at the same time as you use your washing machine, it has benefits for the energy system. And by the way, these are the benefits for you if you do that, right? So that comes back a bit to the incentivization of the consumers. But I think to first educate them. So I said a nice campaign that I saw in the UK was like a marketing campaign to make customers aware of why we are maybe asking them to sort of use their appliances at different times of the day, why there are different tariffs, etc. And then 2 is the incentivization. So if you give them enough incentives to, again, play around with their own demand throughout the day within a household, for example, but you give them a good price for giving energy back, or you give them a point system or something like that, they will be very engaged to do that. But you first need to educate them, tell them maybe why or what are the benefits, because it's not like for the energy system, it's for you and me in the end as well, right? That we're doing this. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you. It was a very interesting presentation indeed. And do we have any more questions from the audience? We have like 3 more minutes, and someone could be lucky to have some insights for your startup, maybe. If not, then I thank you again, Louis, and please feel free to stay to the end of our webinar. If not, I wish you a nice day, and I would like to invite then.
Thank you very much, guys.
Our pleasure to have you here. I would like to invite our another speaker. We heard how the industry evolves and startups can jump into one part of the 6 steps or the other. And now I would like to invite Sophie from Innovation Quarter, also from the Netherlands. Netherlands are quite dominating in our workshop today, to present what they actually do to help SMEs in the energy resource transition. And Sophie works as an account manager at Innovation Quarter. And in her role, she assists foreign companies with their expansion plans to the Greater Rotterdam, the Hague region in the Netherlands. She focuses on companies within the maritime and energy sectors. And the presentation, I understand, was also done together with her colleague Melle, who unfortunately could not join the workshop today. So Sophie will cover whole of it. Okay, Sophie, are you here?
Hi, good afternoon. Apologies. Can you hear me now?
Yes, welcome, Sophie.
Okay, perfect.
Very pleasant to see you online.
Thank you.
Are you capable to share screen?
Yes, definitely. Apologies for the mistake. I was actually in the delegates view instead of in the speakers, so that was a little bit of a problem, but luckily we managed to get there. Here is my presentation. Let me share this one. Let's make it bigger. So as mentioned, I was supposed to present this presentation with my colleague Melle. He unfortunately wasn't able to make it as he fell sick. And I apologize for any background noises. I'm currently at the European Hydrogen Summit in Brussels, trying to meet companies and bring them to the Netherlands, but I'll tell you more about that later. So the energy sector in the Netherlands. I'll first quickly show you the agenda for this presentation, an introduction of Innovation Corridor, so the organization that I work for, then the energy sector in South Holland. The raw materials transition was supposed to be my colleague's part. I unfortunately do not have too much information on that one, but you'll definitely receive the slides from us afterwards. And then if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Then I will introduce you the Invest in Holland network and how we can help companies set up in the Netherlands, followed by a Q&A. So an introduction. So as mentioned, it was supposed to be my colleague Melle and myself. And I work as an account manager for Innovation Corridor, and my focus is on assisting foreign companies with their expansion plans to the Netherlands, and then in the maritime and energy sector. I'll give you more details on that in a little bit. So what is Innovation Corridor? We are the regional development agency of the province of Zuid-Holland. And you can see that on the little map. So you have the map of the Netherlands, and the Rotterdam, The Hague region is the region that we focus on. And we assist companies with being smarter, more sustainable, and healthier to create a healthier South Holland region. So with that, we do business development, so innovation, then investment. We have 4 different funds that Innovation Corridor invests in, and 2 of them are actually focused on the energy sector. Then innovation, so business development is the innovation team. They build consortia, assist companies with finding correct funding opportunities, do the networking. So they're really there for the companies that are based in our region. And then you have the, well, it's team internationalization actually instead of foreign investment, but from internationalization, you have foreign investment and the trade team. So the trade team, they assist companies from the region with their expansion plans. And foreign investments, which is my role, is assisting foreign companies to set up in the Netherlands. Then the sectors that we focus on. So it's actually all the top sectors in the Netherlands. So high-tech systems and materials, the energy and chemical sector, life science and health, which has a large cluster in the Leiden region. Horticulture and food is very big in our region. Maritime and ports, which is of course the port of Rotterdam, which is the largest port in Europe. And then the IT sector we are also focusing on. And that is amongst all the focuses of Innovation Corridor, so internationalization, investment, and innovation. Then the Netherlands are a tiny country. To give you a little bit of an overview of the Netherlands, we are one of the smallest countries within Europe, though we do have one of the highest densities in Europe. The economy is the 17th biggest economies of the world, 4th in the EU. 26% of our land is below sea level. So we are very innovative to make sure that our feet are staying dry. And Amsterdam is the capital of the Netherlands, although some people think that it's The Hague, as there's the government is all located in The Hague. And very often when you see a football game or any sports tournaments, you see Dutch people in orange, and that is because that's the color of the royal family. It's always a nice feature to know. Then the energy landscape in the
sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
There just seems to be something covering part of the screen. It's like kind of like a gray box.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
like-
That is then the box that I can see myself and others.
No problem.
Thank you. Now it's gone, right? Or
It's still in the
moved to
middle of the
side?
screen. So if it's just possible even to move it to maybe the bottom right-hand corner.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Should be away now in the bottom middle.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Great. Thank you.
So the energy landscape in the Netherlands. So in our sector, there are 1,500 people employed in the energy sector, and this is across all aspects of the sector. So up, down, midstream, conventional, as well as renewable energy production. Quite a lot of energy is consumed per year, and we have one transmission system operator, which is TenneT, and together with 7 distribution system operators, they provide a grid stability of over 99.999%, which is very good. So very happy with what is happening in the Netherlands with that regards. But there are a couple of things to focus on for the future. So we're, of course, in the energy transition. We're moving away from fossil fuel towards renewable energy. So you can already see it on the picture. There's the windmills that we have throughout the Netherlands, but also on the North Sea. More electrification going on. Of course, electric vehicles are also very much being promoted in the Netherlands. There's the transition of decentralization happening. The infrastructure in the Netherlands needs to be upgraded to be able to handle all the transition happening on the grids. And to assist with that transition, you have the top sector energy, which is they are part of the Dutch government, or actually founded by the Dutch government to really help that energy transition. And then, as I mentioned, we have one transmission system operator, which is TenneT. They are in charge of the entire network, and they also have connections to our neighboring countries, so Belgium, Germany, but also to the UK, Norway, and Denmark. Then they, of course, supply to our distribution system operators, which we have 7 of in the Netherlands. And we have one single electricity market in the Netherlands. So all the taxes that are imposed are also regulated by the Dutch government. So even though you're in a different region, you shouldn't be paying too much of a difference because that's all regulated. And utility companies, we have quite a few in the Netherlands, but actually 80% is in the hands of 3 major players, which you see on the top of the logos, which are Eneco, Essent, and Vattenfall. So those are very much in charge of what's happening in the Netherlands. The Netherlands, we have quite a few challenges. As you can see, this map here is turning quite red. The majority of the Netherlands is red, and that is actually the grid congestion that's going on in the Netherlands. Because we're making more and more use of the power grids, but also we need to control the supply and demand. More and more people in the Netherlands have solar panels on their roof, so they want to give back to the grid, but the grid can't handle it. So we need to overcome those challenges, and we need some innovation for that as well. So a couple of challenges: so the grid congestion, the electrification, balancing demand and supply, and then also the regulatory environment and investment hurdles. So lots of things happening in the Netherlands. But what is the vision of the Netherlands? And that is, of course, to be the energy hub of Europe. And we do that by coming up with smart energy solutions. upgrading the infrastructure for renewable energy. So what they're now looking at is changing the gas pipelines to carry hydrogen, which also has its own challenges. Decarbonization is, of course, a very important topic, but we can't do any of this without digital capabilities. And there is AI that comes into that picture. We need AI to assist with making the grid smarter, electricity trading. AI is going to be a big part of that, but I think that's across all sectors that we focus on in the Netherlands. Then the South Holland region, which we of course represent from Innovation Corridor. So in the South Holland region, we are of course very much focused on wind energy, which, as I already mentioned, we have a lot of the wind parks on the land, but also on the shore right in front of the coastal line of the Netherlands. You see many wind parks like the one you see on the picture. Solar energy is a big thing. As I mentioned, on a lot of the rooftops in the Netherlands, there are solar panels there. People creating their own energy in their homes. And that also gives us some challenges on that grid. And of course, the Port of Rotterdam is one of the front runners when it comes to the energy transition. They are looking at all different aspects of the renewable energy transition. So hydrogen import, but also production, fracking, wind, solar, they're looking at everything. So keep an eye on the Port of Rotterdam when it comes to the energy transition. Then testing and validation facilities in the Netherlands. As I mentioned, we are a very innovative country. And with that comes, of course, a couple of testing facilities. In our region, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but the ones that are in green are all located in the South Holland region. So in Delft, you have the Green Village, which is really a testing lab to see like what's happening or what can we improve in an urban area. And it's also part of the Technical University of Delft. And the same goes for Yes Delft, who's more focused on high tech and IT, and they're also part of the Technical University. Buccaneer Delft focuses on maritime and energy, so really that combination. And then within Rotterdam, you have a testing center focused on hydrogen, but also electrification. And then throughout the Netherlands, there are multiple different focus points as well. So battery testing more towards the east. In the middle part, well, south middle of the Netherlands, you also have Eindhoven, so Brainport, which is very much focused on high tech, but also chips. So, you know, ASML, who's located in this region. So lots of that happening in our region as well. The slides that are coming up right now are my colleague's slides. So unfortunately, I won't be able to tell you too much about that. But my colleague Melle, he is a business developer in the innovation team, and he focuses more on the green chemical side and then carbon capture, which is also one of the things that we are very much focused on in our region to see like how can we store carbon, so use empty gas fields, pump it in there, those sort of things. So we will share these slides with you. And then if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to him directly, because I don't want to give you false information. So I'm just going to skip these. My apologies for that. And then we go to the Invest in Holland network. So 4 companies to set up in the Netherlands, as I mentioned already, that is my job, to really help them. But why should a company set up in the Netherlands? First of all, the Netherlands has a strategic location. We very often say the Netherlands is the gateway to Europe. And that is also because of our highly or superior infrastructure. As I mentioned, we have the Port of Rotterdam. A lot of produce comes in there. Then via the port and via our infrastructure, it goes to the rest of Europe. So it's a great location to be at. Innovative and business-friendly ecosystem. As I said, we're constantly improving, making sure we're better, increasing our knowledge, and that also is a benefit of the highly skilled workforce that we have. So a lot of factors that benefit or that help build the Netherlands and improve it and make sure that innovation thrives in our country. And Innovation Corridor doesn't do this alone. We have the Invest in Holland network. All together, we assist companies. So that is sort of powered through the Netherlands Foreign Investment Agency. So they're at the top of the list. They assist companies on a national level. So if a company goes to them saying like, well, we want to expand operations to the Netherlands, then the Netherlands Foreign Investment Agency will assist them saying like, well, what is your company doing? What are you good at? And in which area of the Netherlands will you thrive? So we really look at the company to make sure that they succeed. And only then they will introduce the regional partners. But also if a company comes to me saying like, well, nice to meet you, but I actually want to be in the north of the Netherlands in the Groningen area, then we're more than happy to facilitate introductions there as well. So we really work together with that network. And what can we offer to assist companies? That is really providing practical advice on setting up in the Netherlands. So think about recommended legal advisors to see like which legal structure you should set up in the Netherlands and how does it work with incorporating your company. But also once you're looking for staff, like recommended recruitment agencies, what are the tips and tricks when putting out job vacancy, like which websites should you use? Once you need to find an office space or a location, then we're more than happy to assist with that as well. On the left lower corner, there's also the tailor-made fact-finding trip. So if you visit the Netherlands, then we can create a program to really show you around and introduce you to the regions. One thing that we can't really do is business development, because that would be unfair towards the Dutch companies that don't have services like the Invest in Holland network. But there's a fine line between introductions and business development. So if we think that an introduction would be useful to build your ecosystem here, then we're more than happy to assist with that. And what I usually tell people as well, if you have any questions on the Netherlands, just send myself or one of our colleagues an email, and we're more than happy to look into it, because if we don't have the answers, we have a whole network of people that might have the answers for you. So that was my part. So are there any questions?
Thank you, Sophie. It was interesting. If I may jump ahead and ask, what is your experience with the startups in the Netherlands, like using those testing facilities and so on? Are they very involved in solving energy and climate challenges?
No, definitely. I think because you have all the different accelerators as well, so accelerator programs to really focus on startups, helping them build the ecosystem. So I think startups are definitely a big part of our ecosystem. And with that, I think also more for the Dutch startups, our innovation team is more there to assist them. But there are so many events happening, opportunities to connect people, to work together. And I think also one of the things like of the Netherlands is that we very often say the government really works together with businesses as well as research institutes. So as I also said, Yes Delft is part of the TU Delft, so technical university there. And you can really see like they work together with all these different partners, putting everyone together. So I think it's a really good network and startup scale-ups are definitely part of that.
Okay, thank you. And we have a question from the audience. A participant is interested to know, how do regions away from the biggest cities contribute to clean energy transitions? You know, not the Amsterdam, but smaller regions.
Yeah, I think every region does their own thing. But on a national scale, I think everyone is really looking towards like the renewable energy, solar, wind. Now hydrogen is of course also upcoming. So from my side, we're very much talking about like Rotterdam. The port of Rotterdam is really a big player in that. But the other day, someone also told me like, well, the Groningen region, they're also very much focused on hydrogen. But then just slightly different aspects. So every region has their own things. And also, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the eastern part, you have more for electrical vehicles. So every region has sort of something that they focus on. And as I also very often tell people, like, I'm of course here to help companies expand to the South Holland region, but we want them to succeed. So more than me counting the companies that are setting up in a region, if it makes more sense for a company to go to like outside the city, then that's where they should be. And with that, like, yeah, if there's a focus there on solar and you're working on solar, then go to that region. So no, we're happy to assist with that as well.
Yeah, and we saw the whole network, which covers not only the main regions, I assume, but also the smaller ones.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. And another question, is it difficult to get government funding as a startup in these early stages? you know,
It's-
in Holland?
Yeah,
That'd be
yeah,
great.
it can be quite challenging. So from my side, if it's a company that is not registered in the Netherlands, it's quite often more challenging. Also, when I look at the investment funds that Innovation Quarter has, to be applicable for those funds, you need to be registered in our region or make a significant impact in the region. So that's already quite a hurdle for a lot of international companies. But then when you focus on sector-specific funding, then there's a little bit more possible. So depending on which sector or which topic you're working on, for example, right now, there is, I think they actually just closed it, but they were building consortia for sustainable shipping. So for the maritime sector, working on different technologies. And for that, there was quite a lot of money available. So feel free to send me an email with which subsector you're working on to see if there's any subsidies and grants available. And of course, as part of being an EU country, then there's also EU funding as well. But it's a case-to-case basis. I can't just say, here's money, this is where you need to go to, but it really depends on what you're working on.
Yeah, it's nowhere like that, I think. And I'm glad to mention that we have a Seeds of Bravery project partner coming from the Netherlands. And so startups, Ukrainian startups who are interested to expand and maybe search for partnerships or maybe relocate to the Netherlands, they are free to contact our partner and they will set up what is necessary. And if I may, a bit out of topic of your presentation, but knowing that you are in a conference about hydrogen, could you share some insights? Because our previous presentation said that the investment in hydrogen kind of declines. So how does it really looks from the first
Yeah, it is actually,
impression?
it's quite interesting. I'm actually sitting at a table and there's stickers with I love hydrogen. Very nice. I have to say I'm not an expert, so I can't give you all the details, but it's interesting. When I started in the industry, people told me like, and that's, what was it? Last year I attended the World Hydrogen Summit in Rotterdam, and people said like the previous years it was just talk, only talking about like the plans, things that we could have done or could do in the hydrogen sector. And then this year you could already see that people were actually saying like, no, we're actually working on it. We're putting money there. We're building things. So it is happening. It is taking place, but people are also a little bit waiting for each other because that whole value chain needs to be created. And if one element is missing, then of course you can't like sell, you can't distribute, those sort of things. So also, as I mentioned, the hydrogen pipeline in the Netherlands, they're building it currently. And also, I think in the Netherlands, there's a little bit of a funding challenge, whereas the German government has said, here's money, we're going to build this. The Dutch government is not as really giving out money. So it's a little bit more challenging. So I think it will take like a few more years. And then also the regulatory environment with that as well. Once companies are more incentivized to work with hydrogen, and then that will also pick up. So everyone's just waiting for each other a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, so the conference is a good place to, you know, exchange and say, okay, let's do it.
Definitely,
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, Sophie, thank you very much for your presentation. I hope it sparked interest into the Netherlands and the opportunities Innovation Quarter can offer. I wish you a nice time in the remaining of the conference and good partners to find and boost the hydrogen, become the hydrogen gateway to Europe, perhaps.
Yeah, let's hope so. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for having me as a speaker. And as I said, feel free to share the presentation with all the delegates. And if anyone wants or has any questions, needs information, just let me know.
Okay, it's our pleasure to have you. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. And for the participants, then we have a bit longer break, short, but a bit longer break. And I'd like to share my screen about the break. Let's say so. Yes, and I would like to see you at 3 o'clock Brussels time or 4 o'clock Kyiv and Vilnius time. Okay, see you. So let's continue our workshop after the short break. And I am pleased to present Dr. Tantam Lea, Director for Impact and Performance. And Tantam is a violinist, engineer, and mathematician by training, which is impressive. Former Dean in Higher Education Institutions, joined Climate-KIC as its director for France and the Mediterranean, now working with regions across Europe on climate resilience and neutrality. So, Tantan, the floor is yours, and please tell us about what Climate-KIC is for, what it offers for startups, and maybe what are options for Ukrainian startups in the future.
Thank you. So let me share my presentation. Can you see it now?
Yeah, it's working.
It's working? Okay.
Just it's in the working mode, so you can press, yes, now it's perfect.
Good choice of that. So sorry about that.
No problem.
So let's get started. So labadiena, Evelina, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure for me to take part in this very interesting workshop. I will, of course, not attempt to go through every aspect of our activities. That would take hours. So I will start with a quick introduction to what we are doing to support entrepreneurship for climate action. And then I will take a broader perspective on systems innovation and how it is at the core of our approach to climate change mitigation and adaptation. As you know, mitigation and adaptation are both indispensable, they're urgent and complementary. Even if we manage to decrease dramatically our greenhouse gas emissions, adaptation to climate change will need, well, to go on for decades. And conversely, unless we speed up mitigation now by a factor 5 to 10, many parts of the world, including in Europe, are or will get beyond the point where we will become unable to adapt to climate change physically, financially, and socially. So systems approaches, as we have been working on for many years, are now increasingly adopted, not least at the European Commission. And I shall briefly mention one example with the city of Rione. So the presentation has about 20 slides. I will not go into any detail, but you can, of course, consult the slide set if you're interested and find more information on our dedicated web pages. So in entrepreneurship, we start from this general problem, how to harness the potential of innovation for climate-related challenges. Despite the growth of clean tech, which shouldn't become a silo, by the way, the potential for climate solutions remains largely untapped and far from matching the urgency of the climate crisis. The startup scene is booming in many places, but only a fraction of the investment is dedicated to environmental impact. And when corporates, governments, investors seek to sponsor climate-positive entrepreneurship, they struggle to develop full initiatives that really align with their climate strategies and targets. So changing the situation demands interconnection and scale. And during COPs, of course, climate commitments come under the spotlight. Yet it's even more daunting, the challenge of closing the gap between climate commitments and current reality. And it's not only about achieving greenhouse gas reductions once, but it's about creating desirable, just, climate resilient, and sustainable futures. So our focus in entrepreneurship has been threefold: supporting accelerators that are fully equipped to scale climate-positive startups with the skills, the mindset, and the access to funding to create sustainable solutions, fostering collaboration among stakeholders on targeted climate challenges, and to strengthen innovation ecosystems, and working to align demands from governments, corporates, and investors to shorten the adoption curve of climate solutions. Our innovation support ecosystem starts from the earliest stage. Hundreds of cities, as you may have heard, across the world have participated in Climate-thon, which is our series of hackathons around climate challenges chosen by the cities themselves. That creates together a global movement. However, a number of those cities have now moved on from one-time awareness-raising events to the initial step of dynamizing local innovation for climate. Climate Launchpad, which some of you know well, I think Evelina, for instance, is a green business ideas competition, and it's implemented by local partners worldwide. It selects early stage clean tech ideas, and the winning idea bearers can then acquire new skills and knowledge and networking opportunities to get their business on a suitable development curve, hence a Launchpad name. The next step is Climate-accelerators. So those are limited time, theme, and place-based startup acceleration programs. They are mostly delivered by local entrepreneurship support organizations using Climate-KIC's methodology, which we shaped over a dozen years, notably in national climate acceleration programs across Europe. And the selected climate accelerators benefit from management tools, content, coaching, and mentoring networks, but also a suite of services to help the startups build a comprehensive view of their long-term impact. So climate accelerators are also eligible for grant funding from external sponsors and all become part of our multinational community alongside several hundred organizations. At the end of a Climate-Accelerator, the climate ventures that have demonstrated the most promising impact potential have the possibility to join the climate safe. This is an equity as a service investment. Beneficiaries access important assets such as carbon impact forecasting, modeling and validation, fundraising support, connections to Climate-KIC's investor network, commercialization opportunities, EU policy and affairs support, a dedicated portfolio manager, and potentially investment from the 1.5 seed fund. So on this slide, I won't comment in detail, but it illustrates some of the many components that we found relevant to develop to go beyond the scope of single startups and to help them thrive amidst increasingly interconnected climate challenges and innovation ecosystems. So if we sum up, our entrepreneurship activities combines several types of offerings: open innovation challenges, which focus on specific climate themes in partnership with private and public actors, and including methodologies to measure, forecast, and monitor a range of environmental and social impact metrics. An evolving enabling platform, which empowers entrepreneurship support organizations globally with skills, tools, and funding facilitation to bolster solutions that advance local climate goals. Innovation clusters, which deliver entrepreneurial activities focused on specific geographic areas and particular fields or industries, built upon locally embedded innovation ecosystems that can effectively address a systemic challenge. And funding partnerships such as Investing for 1.5 Degree C initiative that aims to attract at least 250 million euros of capital into the most impactful climate tech startups, enabling investors to help driving climate agendas. So those are a few numbers. I'm not going to quote all of them that reflect the scale of the effort. So that's more than 6,000 startups supported over 12 years or so, representing more than 12 billion euros of combined enterprise value, a team of 45 colleagues of diverse nationalities across a range of expertise. So we have not yet, as you can see, had acceleration programs in Ukraine, but this will hopefully change in 2025 with a joint program in the pipeline with a strategic regional innovation consortium to support the best Ukrainian climate launchpad alumni, and Ukrainian ESOs having applied for the next cohort of the Climate-Accelerator program. So to give you just a snapshot of 3 success stories among many, many more, this is one example of scaling startup to meet innovation demands of cities. So Ciwego is an Italian startup that has successfully graduated from the 2022 Circular Cities Climate-Accelerator. It was then selected for Scale-Up Landing Pad Hamburg, run by Hamburg Invest, and it caught the attention of the municipality. So now it has launched a 16-week pilot project to reduce the environmental footprint of goods transportation. The concept is to match people needing to ship goods with drivers on the same shared route, which reduces the number of vehicles on the road. And the pilot contributes to meeting Hamburg's climate goals, such as mitigating 1.4 million tons of CO2 by 2030 through mobility transformation. This is the concerted action to accelerate local 1.5 degree technologies, and it focuses on strengthening entrepreneurship support organizations that are also crucial, as we know, in nurturing early stage climate ventures. It's implemented by Germany's GIZ and EIT Climate-KIC, and it enables more than 15 ESOs to run accelerator programs in Latin America and West Africa, supporting over 150 startups at each stage and strengthening, of course, regional ecosystems. So the third one, it's about strengthening an adaptation innovation cluster for rural communities in Tanzania. So we are leading this initiative with support from Irish Aid, and the aim is to enhance climate resilience in rural communities by building a collaborative ecosystem of businesses, universities, entrepreneurs, investors, and NGOs, by empowering locally led climate solutions and adaptation strategies, and by amplifying the voices of young innovators to drive impactful climate initiatives. So now let me take a few steps back and put all of this in a broader perspective. One individual startup, even a unicorn, may not transform whole systems. But we present this perspective to startup audiences because we believe that a shift to systems innovation is unavoidable to reach the climate targets that our societies need to achieve. And this shift is starting to happen, and it will inevitably change the structure and the logic of markets that are either emerging or having to reinvent themselves. So this is a complex and a highly non-linear evolution. So it's never too easy to forge your own, never too easy and never too early also, to forge your own understanding of how your future markets could be changing in depth. At Climate-KIC, we take a place-based systems innovation approach. In other words, we use systems thinking to shape innovation roadmaps and portfolios. And we support whole places, cities, regions, and countries, and industries to engage in relevant levels of transformation through finding and implementing solutions in integrated ways. This is a very schematic figure that describes the still dominant on the left hand, the still dominant culture to develop innovation. That's financing single projects that bring incremental change, siloed and fragmented activities, often exclusively focused on technological improvements. And what working across multiple places and with hundreds of public-private project consortia has taught us is that systemic challenges such as those brought by climate change require a different order of innovation that's seeking to grow and finance interconnected portfolios of innovation projects that learn from each other, that's working across a wide range of change levers that include, of course, technological ones, but also societal, behavioral, natural, economic, financial, and regulatory. The most elaborate format to apply systems thinking to whole places and industries is a deep demonstration. As a starting point, you need stakeholders that recognize that their climate-related challenges cannot be decisively tackled through incremental siloed approaches. A deep demo program generally consists of 4 phases. In the intent phase, so that's the top right one, we work with challenge owners to secure commitment. Challenge owners can be typically national, regional, city authorities, sectoral confederations. However, a much wider range of local public and private actors is convened very early in the process. In the frame phase, we describe together the systems to be addressed in more detail and from multiple viewpoints, and we map the needs prioritized by local actors, the barriers, relevant innovations to date or in the pipeline. We agree on key leverage points to intervene on those systems. In the portfolio of action phase, the focus is on deploying innovation solutions, policy labs on testing new financial models, working on multi-level governance, interconnected decision-making, on matching business solutions to demand, notably through accelerator programs, and on building capacity, upgrading skills, and learning with stakeholders. And then the sense-making or intelligence phase is more of a permanent iterative effort. It collects intelligence and business cases. It pursues financial mobilization in more specific schemes. It further develops monitoring, evaluation, and learning processes. And it creates assets from all the insights and the learning, which will then further support decision and investment. Examples of deep demo programs include, for instance, a multi-year initiative to decarbonize the whole agri-food value chain in Ireland, where it accounts for 37% of the country's greenhouse gas emissions. Or another one supporting the Slovenian government to move from a collection of advanced circularity projects to actually achieving near circularity across the entire national economy. This pioneering approach has by now become part of a wider dynamic at European level. Horizon Europe, which is European Union's current multi-year framework programs to support research and innovation, has introduced 5 missions, and 2 of them are focusing respectively on adaptation to climate change and on climate neutral smart cities. The common point across the 5 missions is that to reach Europe's objectives by 2050, you need front runners to aim for a much shorter timeline. For instance, this adaptation mission aims to help at least 150 regions and communities achieve climate resilience by 2030, building a community of practice on climate adaptation and supporting the implementation of the European Green Deal and the climate adaptation strategy. And likewise, the cities mission aims to achieve at least 100 climate neutral smart European cities by 2030. These will be centers of experimentation and innovation so that all European cities can achieve the climate targets neutrality by 2050. 112 cities and metropoles were selected by the mission, which represents 12% of Europe's population. Net Zero Cities is the platform and the backbone project for the Cities mission. It's a consortium of 33 partners. It's led by us, by Climate-KIC. and it supports 112 cities and facilitates access to the solutions they need to achieve their climate neutrality objectives in a socially inclusive way. The first major step in net zero cities is establishment of climate city contracts, which include a shared ambition, an action plan, and an investment plan, all three with a 2030 horizon. Developing a climate city contract requires intensive dialogue between municipal teams and with many partners. And later steps include a pilot cities program to overcome the major blocks on the road for rapid decarbonization, and an enabling city transformation program to implement innovations necessary for the transformation of the city as a whole. So this is heavy lifting work, and it does not start with jumping on technological point solutions. One of the first tasks to radically accelerate decarbonization trajectories is to rethink multi-level governance and cross silos in decision making. All dimensions of transformation have to be brought into the analysis and integrated to build the action plan. And this can change quite dramatically the way cities will formulate their demand for innovative solutions. Of course, one of the biggest challenges that cities are meeting is the cost of reaching carbon neutrality, which exceeds their total budget by a factor 10. The Climate City Capital Hub, developed by Net Zero Cities with the European Investment Bank, equips cities with several tools to navigate the options for raising funds, loans, and financing for sustainable urban development. A partly similar project called Pathways to Resilience, part of the adaptation mission and also led by Climate-KIC, will support 100 regions in building a shared vision of their future regional resilience journeys and an action plan that can be implemented across sectors and territories. The missions also call for downstream innovation action projects, and here are three of them which aim to frame, demonstrate, and scale up innovation portfolios for climate resilience at regional scale with a strong contribution from nature-based solutions. Each of those projects is focused on one biogeographical region, that's continental, Mediterranean, Atlantic. They involve demonstration regions, which host and participate in real-scale demonstrations of nature-based solutions, and replicating regions, which will adapt the most successful approaches and results and learned lessons to their specific contexts. So what is very challenging but also interesting with these projects is that they require to work from multiple perspectives on how to link very local specific solutions to the larger systemic challenge of making a whole region resilient to climate change. And that involves organizations of all sizes, including small enterprises. Now, let me finish this very quick bird eye view with a few words on a Ukrainian case study. Together with the NGO United for Ukraine, a Climate-KIC team has been developing a pilot with the city of Rivne, which is a member of the Covenant of Mayors since 2015. Its first sustainable energy action plan, the SECAP, reduced greenhouse gas emissions by 18% compared to 2010. And the second SECAP aims at reducing emissions by a further 30% by 2030. The Rivne City Council joined the European Energy Award 3 years ago, and it wants to learn from European cities' efforts to achieve climate neutrality and to engage stakeholders and citizens in the transition. So Rivne was selected by the Net Zero Cities Pilot City Program, and it's implementing the Municipal Energy Passport, which is a pilot project focused on improving the energy data management system and model scenarios for net zero transition. As part of this program, the first phase of the Climate Leadership Academy pilot in Rivne has been focusing on the city's administration. That includes three main modules. First is expert-led workshops focusing on Rivne's climate challenges and skill gaps, complemented with practical examples of successful strategies to support the integration of renewable energy sources and more globally to reduce the city's carbon footprints. Then online capacity building training on systems innovation, which provides foundational knowledge and competencies to enable cross-team work and to make sense of complex dynamic systems, and then to co-create, test, and implement effective coupled interventions. And leadership team huddles, where participants in the pilot work together in thematic working groups on their ongoing projects and challenges, sharing insights and requesting peer support. Now, the elements on this slide are not directly linked with Climate-KIC's activities, but they were provided by our Ukrainian partner Ilya Yeremenko in Reune, and that should be of interest to some of you. The government of Ukraine has established a special taxation regime for the IT industry by creating a virtual platform, the City. You have the link on the slide. Residents get tax advantages and other benefits from the state. The government has also launched the e-Robota project, which financially supports citizens to start and develop their businesses with a separate stream of support channel to veterans. And then Reune, the city, implements an SMEs development program, which provides financial information and consulting support to business entities and implements local initiatives and business events. To support local businesses and brands during the war, the Reune City Council with the community's the city's business community have launched the Support Reune initiative. That's a permanent space in a shopping mall, which allows representatives of the Light Industry Association to present their products. There's also a Day of Light Industry event that was held in 2023, among other events, festivals, and exhibitions. The City Council attracts external funding for development of entrepreneurial activities in the community. The project initiative SRER, Reune won the competitive selection within the project supporting the rapid economic recovery of Ukrainian municipalities that was implemented by the UNDP in Ukraine and funded by the government of Germany. And finally, a public multifunctional space is being created in the city center to accommodate a variety of public services, promote business, and meet the needs of current but also potential entrepreneurs with information, consulting, educational support, and partner networking. Finally, what is a longer-term vision for the Climate Leadership Academy in Ukraine? So it's, of course, a number of components. It's online learning modules to equip more than 1,000 Ukrainian professionals every year with capacity for hands-on innovation development, and also skills to work in complexity and systems transformation. It's a community of practice formed by Ukrainian professionals from the Climate Leadership Academy, with strategic partners from across Europe and Ukrainian institutions around the sustainable cities and communities. It's also a Stronger Together, so it's a 1 to 3 months international placement experience with Climate-KIC and United for Ukraine to work on transformative European projects. This will notably build on a successful program that is called Pioneers into Practice, and that we conducted for many years across 7 countries from Northern, Southern, and Central Eastern Europe. That's a portfolio of holistic innovation solutions, of course, immersing relevant experience from our place-based systems innovation programs in the Ukrainian contexts through participatory policy experimentation, pilot innovation actions with Ukrainian stakeholders and decision makers. And it's a 3-day climate challenge-led learning festival with a series of seminars, workshops, and community engagement experiences alongside up to 150 peers. The discussions on how to fund all this are actively ongoing, but we really hope that it can bring a break to the vast ambition of rebuilding Ukraine, integrating social, economic, and environmental dimensions for a green and a just transition. So please stay tuned for more. I will stop here. In 20 minutes, I'm only merely scratching the surface, but hopefully it gives you an first idea of what we have been doing across Europe and beyond, and it can encourage you to find out more about what we could do together in the coming years. So, Slava Ukraini, and best of success to each of you in a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable future. Back to you, Evelina.
Thank you, Tamtam. And it was very interesting to hear what you do with Ukraine. And I think our project, Seeds of Bravery, should investigate the Rivne's project activities and the academy, like where we can find connections. And I hope Kadi can give us like 5 minutes, because we have 4 or 5 questions, so maybe you can answer them very quick. What do you think, what are the main barriers to scaling up climate innovation solutions quickly? Like, what does it prevent from scaling quickly?
So I think short answer is that in many cases, the supply and the demand don't live on the same planet. I think so. So that means, and it's not as obvious as it seems, because the let's say the demand is itself a bit emerging, and it's because there are so many components that come into play. You have the technological performance, but then you have also what people will do with that, how it's going to meet policy constraints, how it's going to meet the maturity of the market, and so on. So in fact, the demand to nature needs to have a dialogue with the supply, but also the supply cannot just push, So I think the main barrier is really that when you're a supplier, you tend to think, I have the right solution, I understand the problem, and I'm trying to convince my interlocutors that that's what they need. And in many cases, it doesn't work like that. The other thing is that it's very scattered. So in fact, if you're a city, for instance, you have 1,000 offers of services, which all look some kind of interesting. How do you prioritize chain? It's also the capacity to use them. So I think really the main barrier is making sense of the demand in a more integrated way so that it can send clear signals to the supply side, and then you can have a space for scaling up and investing at scale, on a critical mass. Sorry, that was a bit long.
No problem. Thank you.
I can see the other questions you want me to have a look, or?
You can do it yourself if you want. I mark them as you will answer all of them. So
it's a matter of time because I don't want to eat up on Caddy's space. So I think the 1.5 fund supports later stage. So I mean that would take a bit more than 30 seconds. So I can send you some information about that if it helps. It's really a fund that gathers a number of investors who are joining now, and so they're presented with startups that have changed this climate safe program, and basically we can make a very tailor-made presentation and matchmake with investors. The portfolio finance model, well, that's a bit of the same. In fact, it helps achieve transformational change first because it takes into account all those interdependencies which are not naturally taken into account, but also because in terms of investments, if you look at the example of cities that I tried to describe, once you have this plan and you know that you will need 10 times your budget to achieve transformation and decarbonation, you really need to cluster the needs together. And in fact, that is either you do it by silo, so the energy silo, the building silo, and so on, or you actually try to build also on the interdependencies to see a given solution assembled with another one, how can they really work on the whole system? So that's, it's a bit of an abstract answer, but that's really how it's starting to work. And crucial steps to help regions achieve, well, that's a lot of things. It's one that I prioritize what they mean by resilience. Decarbonation, you know what that means. You measure the greenhouse gases. Adaptation is something that's much more local. What do you want to become resilient to, and for what kind of future? So the first step is really to prioritize what they want to work on, to make some choices on what are the acceptable risks or not acceptable, to bring in the communities which are very often have conflicting interests. And then you start doing pilots with the idea of scaling them. So the 3 projects I mentioned are really trying to do that. You really look on the ground when you implement a solution. How does it really look like? Does it have unintended consequences, positive or negative? And then you really think of how can I scale that up to a district, to a department, to a region. And in fact, it's again this thing of learning by doing, because you can't completely figure out your adaptation plan from scratch. You have to experiment on a number of hypotheses on the way.
Okay.
Sorry, a bit fast.
I know it's quick. It seems we have to organize another panel discussion just among those interested to pose questions and discuss, and maybe we can do that in some frame of some project. So thank you, Tantam, a lot, and Achu for joining us today. I wish you a nice afternoon. Yes, and I would like to invite Kadi for the. I think I skipped some questions, something. And I'd like to invite Kadi, who is based in Tallinn in Estonia, and she's supporting cleantech companies in establishing partnerships, keeping a dialogue and collaborating with the public sector, as well as with establishing export and foreign investment relationships. So I kindly invite Kadi to share. I give her the screen and the stage. And let's hear about what Baltic countries has to offer in terms of cleantech. We want to finalize our workshop with demonstrating regional hands-on situations, how it works. Thank you a lot.
Thank you, Evelina. Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone. So I will get straight to the point, give you a little overview of the clean tech sector in the Baltic countries. And I will try to share my slides with you just to have a little support. Can you see it now?
Yes, full screen. Awesome.
Yes. So this is the investment history of the clean tech sector in the Baltic countries. We reached a peak before the COVID started in 2021, and since then we've been climbing up again in the investment amounts in the Baltics. Last year it was almost 400 million, which is quite a big year-on-year growth as well from 2022. What you can see with the line and the dots on it is the number of deals. It's interesting to see it because you can tell that whereas the total investment amounts have been going up again in the Baltics since the plunge from COVID, the number of deals has been declining. What does it mean? What we see is that the total amount of investments is being carried to a large extent now by deals that are in tens of millions, meaning that it's more bigger deals that are carrying the total amount, and the amount of smaller deals in earlier stages has been declining. I will come back to that point because we have reasons to think that it will pick up again very fast, and that could be interesting information for you too. Now looking at the sectoral view. So here, just on the pie chart, you see only pre-series P, Series B investment rounds. Otherwise, it would just it wouldn't show the real picture of the share between the different sectors. All of the big post-Series B deals that took place in 2023, which is the data that we have here, were in the energy sector. As you can see on the right-hand side, Skeleton, PVKs, and Alcogen are all energy players. When we come back to the pie chart and the smaller deals up to Series B, we see that the biggest amount of investments has been going to materials and chemicals. Just behind is the energy and power sector. They're really the two biggest investment attractors at the moment as well, what we see in 2024. Energy and power has always been an important clean tech sector, and it will always remain one. However, materials and chemicals is something that has been growing faster than the other sectors. For example, transportation and logistics used to take a bigger share in the total investments some years back. So we see a faster development in materials and chemicals indeed. The same goes for actually agriculture and food. There's more and more going on in there. It used to be a quite tiny sector, and now we see bigger and bigger investments going into these clean tech subsectors as well. What we discussed briefly earlier with Evelina is that looking at the total investment amounts, of course, Baltics being small markets, small countries, it doesn't seem that much, 400 million of clean tech investments per year. But when we look at things on a per capita basis, which does make sense in order to make ourselves comparable on the global stage, we see that the Baltic countries' clean tech investments do precede those in Northern America, those in China. These are oftentimes seen as the biggest investors into clean tech, but we can see that on a per capita basis, we're really performing well. And in order to understand why it's so, I think we have to look at the policy and the regulatory support, which of course is very EU related. Most of the environmental and climate policies are pan-EU policies. However, there is also a governmental role. I'm not sure whether you've gotten in detail into the different kinds of environmental and climate policies that are supporting clean tech entrepreneurship in Europe and the Baltic countries, but just a short overview of the historical evolution. And perhaps you can compare it to also what kind of regulations and policies you have in place in Ukraine. What has really shaped kind of climate tech is the EU emission trading system, our carbon market, the obligatory one that was instated in 2005. That has really given a financial incentive for some of the biggest polluters, notably in the energy sector, to start decarbonizing. And that has really helped along and contributed to the fact that now we have a very strong clean tech energy subsector. And then in 2018, EU also instated very strong country-based climate goals, the effort sharing regulation that gives it to transportation, building sector, small energy production, waste management, industrial processes, and food systems, and also land use and forestry regulation that gives the same for those sectors. What it does for clean tech companies is that member states, so the 3 Baltic countries, have had to define also for themselves how are we going to reach those goals that we agreed to reach. Meaning that countries have been more motivated to support clean tech sector solutions and companies that can help them to reach those goals in those specific sectors. And then I think the big change for clean tech really came with the previous EU Commission that took office in 2019, that very quickly came out with the EU Green Deal. And that really meant that the ambitions were raised, both when it comes to climate, all the other environmental criteria, but also the innovation and entrepreneurship that support those climate and environmental goals. That has come along with, of course, major investments, both from the EU funds and also the country state budgets. Some of the examples, in 2022, in order to recover from the COVID crisis, EU came out with the Recovery and Resilience Fund and also Repower EU. Both of them have put a very important amount of money to the member states in order to be directed towards sustainability, clean tech companies included. So that has really helped us increase the investment amount, and we still see those effects coming live, so to say. Some of the investments that have been made have taken longer time. So I would say in 2025, we're still going to be seeing new effects of the Recovery and Resilience Fund, as well as from Repower EU, kind of bringing more money and support towards clean tech sector. I think what was a key evolution in 2023 was the EU Net Zero Industry Act. This really tackled kind of the solutions and the ways in which we're going to be decarbonizing the industry, the hard to abate sector, so to say. And what's important is that they brought out the major technologies that are going to need to be scaled up and adopted in order to decarbonize the industry, but also they put forward the investments that are going to be needed in order to do so. So that again tackles a major milestone in clean tech kind of support system on the EU level. And now I feel like the 2024 year is kind of the time where the EU level regulatory ambition setting has been done to an extent that nation states, the member states, so Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, for example, kind of take over. It's time to implement. It's time to look at the country level. How are we actually going to do that? And that's when it gets even more interesting for clean tech companies in the clean tech sector, because each country has their own needs, their own complications, their own kind of industrial structure, what kind of sectors are the biggest, what kind of consumption patterns we have in the countries. And now what we see is that in all of the 3 Baltic countries, we are looking over our climate goals and making them more precise. Meaning more granular on a time scale. So we're not only looking at 2050, we're looking at shorter time frames and how we're going to reach those smaller milestones along the way. And at the same time, also granular on a sectoral level. So I would say that it would be interesting for you probably to look at the kind of a European country, let's say one of the Baltic countries, and really look at their national regulation, be it climate or environmental, other environmental category-wise, and see how do I help this country to reach its goals. And this is what's going to give you an edge to apply for different kinds of programs, different kinds of collaborations with bigger companies that are present in this country. I think understanding where you situate yourself as a problem solver from the climate and environmental perspective is very important. Now, of course, we have tons of challenges and opportunities in the clean tech context. And the funny thing is that they're very similar. They're in the same categories, I would say. I would say that we have started solving the problems that are keeping back the clean tech development in the Baltic countries, but there's still a long way to go. And I will reach also the conclusion saying why I think it's a good place. The Baltic countries are a good place to kind of soft land on the European market. When it comes to access to capital and funding, the Baltic countries have really made major advancements on that. Clean tech funding, especially on up until Series A funding, is very well accessible now, I would say, in the Baltics. Where we're still struggling is maybe the bigger investment rounds post Series B. There are no more local funds, so the companies do need to find foreign funds that can invest. What is good is that we do have those bigger funds present in the Nordic countries, and given the good investment and entrepreneurship kind of taxation system and broader environmental regulatory system, foreign investors, even from further countries, are very motivated to basically invest into clean tech companies in the Baltics, regardless of the fact that the market in the Baltics is not that huge. Of course, we're still working on the adoption of clean tech. The demand side of clean tech has always been, for the whole world, the major issue, because you can finance all you want. If there's no demand for those solutions, you can't develop the sector. We are getting better there. The fact that we have the obligation in now kicking in all over EU for bigger companies and for investors to report on their sustainability criteria. It also means that they kind of filter down this demand for all of their suppliers, for all of their investees. And that means that those companies are also going to be reporting their environmental footprint and looking into how to improve that. That means that they're starting to demand clean technologies, and I can see that it has really changed the game for some of the clean tech companies. And this is also where we see the very strong connection between regulatory evolution and the clean tech market. Of course, we still have also regulatory and policy constraints, and those are being tackled. What I would say about the Baltic countries is that our innovation agencies and our government agencies overall are very approachable, and they're very open to look for flexible ways to kind of help innovation come to the market. I wouldn't say it's perfect. There is still red tape that we need to tackle. But the advantage we have as small countries is that it's easy to talk to people and find flexible solutions, tailor-made solutions. So in that sense, I would say we're definitely moving in the right direction. There's also efforts going on in the 3 Baltic countries right now to make sure that permitting processes are made faster. That might be interesting for the ones among you who have something productive where you need to build a production plant or something similar. There is also a challenge of qualified workforce. That's something that mainly the bigger clean tech companies are bringing out. There is I would relate it to a wider tendency of perhaps young people not being so interested in going to work for industry anymore, and perhaps also a dislike, not a dislike, but perhaps a lack of interest for the STEM subjects. There are policies in place and major government efforts going towards helping to kind of tackle that gap in workforce that we have. There are also initiatives going on to kind of make it easier to hire in high value-added sectors, at least from outside of our countries, outside of EU. So I would say that we're working on that, but companies are still saying that, you know, it could be better, to be completely frank with you. And yeah, of course, clean tech being very hardware based prototyping infrastructure is something that could be improved still. It has been improving the testing facilities and piloting facilities as well. And that's something that we're constantly working on, and more investment is going towards that. I would say that the universities are really stepping up their game in that. So that's something that's improving. Yeah, and so basically, I feel like when you look at the Baltic countries, it's a good place to kind of test the European regulatory system for yourself. How do you kind of provide value to reach all the climate and environmental goals that we have set, and what is maybe different is that we do have this flexibility and real kind of entrepreneurial drive. I would say there's a very strong ecosystem for startup companies. Of course, building on the fact that we've been building up our economies for a little over 30 years now, so we're still kind of young and open to innovation in that sense. And I would say that also shows in our administrative processes. And at the same time, we're very close to the Nordic markets that, of course, are the most developed in the demand for clean tech sector solutions. And also looking towards south, Germany and France, those markets are close to us as well. So I would say that it's good to kind of develop your first European experiences in the Baltic countries. But it's also easy to kind of evolve from this first European market experience towards the whole of European markets. We ourselves have developed a very strong partnership network all over Europe that we can also help you with, of course. We have partner organizations in all the corners of Europe, and they're doing basically the same that we are doing in the Baltics. So the way we have built Cleantech for Baltics and the way we can support you is that there's, of course, topics that we can help you with on a pan-Baltic level. But when it comes to very concrete country-based questions, then feel free to reach out to me for the Estonian Cleantech through the Estonian Cleantech Association, and for Estonia specific questions. And then, of course, Sunrise Valley Science and Technology Park in Lithuania and Green Tech Cluster in Latvia. If you need context there, I'm always glad to put you in touch, and I believe Evelina can also do that. Yeah, so that's all from me. Hope that was useful, and shoot your questions.
Thank you, Kadi. I think startups should, like knock on our doors. I mean, I was amazed how much opportunities. I actually had a question like, what advantages does it bring for startups starting to cooperate with small countries like the Baltic countries? But you already answered it in your presentation afterwards. So I will pose, as the time is ticking, a question from the audience. How can startups overcome limited access to the capital and funding? Like you mentioned that in the Baltic countries, we have good funding for pre and Series A, but then it's limited like everywhere. Are there any suggestions, ideas, how startups can survive this valley of death?
Yeah. I mean, the challenges are the same everywhere, I would say. Basically, you reach, after Series A, usually for hardware-based clean tech, you reach a gap where the financing needs go so high that you're going to have to seek for infrastructure funds, private equity funds, and their risk appetite is simply not aligned, not so well aligned, at least with the risks that are still relating to what the clean tech company would be doing in that stage. So in that stage, as a clean tech company, normally you would be kind of planning to build your first real production plant, right? Industrial scale plant. And you would be looking for tens, if not hundreds of millions usually, and that's hard to gap. There are more and more funds that are open to look at their own risk profiles and the way they invest, because what everyone is saying that is that there are very good investment opportunities in clean tech. And it's simply a question of finding a common language to manage well the risks. How you can mitigate those risks and how you can attract investors. For them, they're looking for you to prove that there is demand for what you're doing. Usually the investor in that scale can either take a kind of technology or production risk, or they can take the market risk, but they can't take both. You're probably still going to have some of the production and technology risk, as you haven't industrialized your production yet, so you don't know everything about it, all the costs and how they're going to evolve on the industrial level. So I would say focus, of course, on both. But if you can guarantee offtake agreements, that's probably the best way to also attract your investors.
Okay, Kadi, thank you so much for the answer. I think we should conclude our workshop right now, and thank you again for all the speakers, for Louis, for Sophie, Tantam, and you, Kadi. And also thank you for Abi, Nuala, Atta, and the rest of the team who helped to organize this workshop. It will be available online, and the participants have our contacts in case they have some questions. I hope that the participating startups, who was the majority of registered audience, have insights of where their startup is in the market, or industry development, how they can tackle into regional opportunities like those that offered by regional development agencies, such as we saw in the Netherlands, or such as business support organizations that like Sunrise Tech Park. But also hope that participants saw opportunities for Ukraine as a city, regulatory opportunities, networking opportunities that can happen and help Ukraine to rebuild and achieve climate goals together with Europe. So thank you again for all the participants, and I wish you a nice evening, and if you share some insights and ideas per email, that would be very, very delightful. Thank you again. Have a nice evening.